What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Robski coming at you once again. Finally, I finished a milestone of my life. I'm going to do yet another book review because I've attempted to read this book 3 times already, and I failed, and I did the 4th time, and I finally succeeded. The book I'm going to review is Victor Hugo's classic, Les Miserables. Now, this is the unabridged version, which means it's the full version, and it comes in at 1,460 pages. The only other book that I read like this is called The Stand. Okay, now this book, Les Miserables, it's pretty much essential reading for all men. That's what the Brett McKay Alphabet of Manliness. The Art of Manliness author. He's like, you have to read this as a man, and now I see why. Okay. Overall, let's just go through the plot a little bit. So it starts right off. We got a convict named Jean Valjean. Actually, it starts off talking about a bishop. And this bishop is a very godly man. He's a good bishop, very well respected. And then shortly after they talk about the bishop, there's a convict who couldn't find a place to sleep. And the convict goes all over these inns, and they say, oh, you're a convict, we're not going to give you a place to sleep. So just basically treat him like crap. They wouldn't even let him sleep out in a stable with the dogs and the horses. So he goes to one place, and they tell him that you can sleep there. So they pointed him out to the bishop's place, and the bishop welcomes him. Okay, John Valjean, or John Valjean. He goes and stays at the bishop's place, waits till the bishop is asleep, and then he steals a bunch of stuff. He steals the bishop's silverware. He steals the bishop's just fine dining. And this bishop doesn't have a lot in the first place. Okay, so he goes out, and he gets caught by the police, and they bring him back. And the bishop, in order to save him from getting arrested, he says, oh, he forgot the candles. Okay, and then the bishop is saying, you need to become a good man. I'm buying your soul. From this moment on, you need to become a good man. So Jean Valjean goes out there with his silver, so he's released. The silver is worth money and it's valuable, but he does one more thing. There's this young boy named Petit Gervais, and basically he drops his some money, a sous piece they call it in France. I don't know how much that's worth in our money, but Jean Valjean steals it, not realizing what he's doing because he's kind of having one of those moments. And then he feels totally awful. He tries to find his kid, never finds him again. So from that moment on, not the bishop, but after that, he decides he's going to be a just man. He goes to this town and becomes a millionaire. He goes in disguised under the name M. Madeleine. And he becomes a bishop and eventually becomes mayor of this town because of his success. He learned how to, I think he may learn how to make ink or whatever. But anyway, so he becomes successful. And there's this woman named Fantine who got knocked up by this guy. And this guy totally cut her out of his life. So she has this child. She's a single mom, and you know, she's basically going from town to town. She's poor. She has her little daughter Cosette, and she gives them up to these evil people called the Thénardiers, who run this inn. Okay, she keeps going, and it's terrible for her because she goes to the wrong town. She eventually goes to the town that Jean Valjean is mayor of, as M. Madeleine. Okay, there's another character we're introduced to who's a very good villain. His name's Javert. Javert is a police officer, and he's described as a wolf. I actually like Javert. He's a very admirable character. He does things by the book. He's kind of like a hound dog. He just doesn't give up. He's just a very he's a very gritty character, but he's also plays the villain in this story. So John Valjean's at this town. Everybody loves him, and he's a great mayor. And there's this other priest that the only one who doesn't like him is this other priest who he ends up saving his life because John Valjean's very strong and he's known for his strength. He's called John the Jack in prison communities. He goes and this other priest has a cart on him, and John Valjean picks it up, and Javert said, there's only one man that I know that could do this. And so Javert right away suspects it's the convict, John Valjean. Meanwhile, Fantine is kind of, she's kind of out of it, and she's working, and then she loses her job, and then she goes through some things, and she starts becoming a prostitute. And she starts becoming a prostitute because these Thénardiers are asking for more money. She thought she's going to get her child back. Well, she becomes a prostitute, but she finally moves to the town where John Valjean's at. And then, let me see what happens next. She keeps sending out her money. Meanwhile, Javert's kind of on him. And then there's one man named Champman Theo who is thought to be John Valjean when he's not. And he's about ready to go to prison for life for a crime. It was a petty crime, but they said, well, you're John Valjean, so you're going to, we're going to put you in away for life. And Javert, who was fooled, he suspected the real John Valjean, but he said, oh, this guy is the real one. So Javert wants to lose his job. And then M. Madeline, who's really John Valjean, says, no, Javert, you need to keep your job. And John Valjean goes, and he's going to go help out Fantine, who's sick. And then Javert wants to arrest her because she had a bunch of guys, snicking at her, and then she defended herself, and then she's going to get put away. She just wants to get back to Cosset. John Valjean goes out and says, no, I'm the real John Valjean. And then he goes back to the town and is going to tell Fantine that he's going to go get Cosset for her. But Javert comes in and says, I'm going to arrest him. And then she ends up dying, and John Valjean's arrested. So that's part one of the book. Part two talks about Waterloo. Waterloo has it's cool because it talks about the French Revolution and things were going on in France, like Waterloo. Good historical fiction. But basically talks about Thénardier, quote unquote, saving this guy whose last name is Pontmercy. And Pontmercy's son becomes a huge character. His name's Marius. But while this is happening, John Valjean is trying to get to Cosset. So he actually saves a convict's life on this ship with a bunch of convicts. But then he escapes. He's basically faked his death, and he escapes, and he's going after Cosset. Meanwhile, the only one who doesn't suspect that he's dead is Javert. So John Valjean goes to Cosset, rescues her, buys her a bunch of stuff, and Cosset's just, these Thénardiers are just treating her like crap, making her do all the grunt work, treating her like she's subhuman, like a dog, and because the Thénardiers have other daughters. But John Valjean falls in love with her and raises her, so he goes and gets her, buys her a bunch of stuff, and gets her. And it's really cool because he's kind of trying to lay low, and Javert keeps following him. And throughout the whole book, Javert's basically on his tail like a hound dog, okay? So after you get this part, you go to Marius, and it talks about Marius's background. And he becomes really important in the part of the story, because Marius ends up falling in love with Cosset once Cosset becomes of age. John Valjean raises Cosset. Cosset becomes a young woman. I didn't know how much it is, but probably the book, she's in late teens, early 20s. Back then, people would get together and get married a lot earlier. And so the end of the book, basically, Marius goes and fights the revolutionary. He thinks he's going to die, and so he's having a love affair with Cosset, and John Valjean's kind of jealous because he loves Cosset, but he understands things. So John Valjean actually ends up saving Marius's life. He meets back up with Javert, but he actually saves Javert's life as well. And Javert kind of has a paradox, and because Javert has been so by the book, well, Javert had a chance to put John Valjean away, and he didn't do it this time because Javert knew that John Valjean saved him, and Javert could have died. And Javert, throughout the whole story, once this happens, he's going through his mind. He's like, well, I did the right thing, but no, I didn't. So he's like, this is a lose-lose situation, because if I put him away, then I didn't do the right thing because he saved my life and could have killed me. He's like, but if I would have put him away, I did the right thing with the law. But like I said, he saved his life. So Javert is coming to an only situation where he cannot handle, and he ends up killing himself, which is sad. But Javert's the type of guy, he's by the book, he's right or wrong, and I admire him because of his efficiency. But we all know that real life is gray, and Javert can't handle gray. He can handle right, wrong, black, and white. So Javert kills himself, and then Marius finds out about John's past, and then Marius tries to get him away from Cosset, but then Marius also finds out that John Valjean saved his life, and he's all, turns a leaf, and by then it's too late because John Valjean's old and dying. And then finally they go visit him. And then I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end because I don't want to spoil it. But it's a good read. It's a very, very difficult read. I'm going to rate this book. I can give it an 8. It is a classic. I had a buddy on the fire crew who just rated this is his favorite book, and I see why. But to be honest with you, I had a very tough time getting through the middle parts. There's a lot of action, but there's also a lot of lengthy explanations. To me, it's not nearly as good as The Stand. It's as long as The Stand, but The Stand still is my favorite book of all time. But this is this is a good read. It's an essential read. But again, it's not as good as I thought it would be. And I heard the musical is not very good either. So it is a must read. Look for my next book review. I just got done looking at listening to the audiobook, The Dark Tower #6, Song of Susanna. I'll review that book as well. Other than that, you guys have a good night, YouTubers. Thanks.